Welcome into the Saints Insider Podcast live edition here on this Tuesday, August the 26th, where we are coming to you from all quarters, from inside cars and from patios of cafes and from homes and all of that, because the big news of the day is, of course, that Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift are engaged. No, that's not it. We're here to talk about Spencer Rattler being chosen over Tyler Shough as the Saints starting quarterback. Although my daughter did not illegally use her phone in high school to text me about that news. So you tell me what the big news really is.
What's going on with your daughter, man? Doesn't she have her
she's not supposed to use her phone
This
in
is your
school.
job as a father.
But I
That's
got
not
like
what we're talking about. Like she's more concerned about an engagement.
Well, Jeff seems to think this is all still just a ruse, but I don't know.
Yeah, you all are still falling for it. I can't believe it.
I just figured if I said Taylor Swift in the first 10 seconds of this podcast, it'll get more views. That's all.
I thought she might have texted you about Thomas Morstead getting cut. I thought that was it.
Okay. All right. Spencer Rattler is the Saints starting quarterback. That is what everyone is here to hear about and to talk about. And Kellen Moore made that announcement at about 1:45. I don't know that surprise is the word I would use. I think that there was a train of thought, and Luke, will start with you, just that, hey, maybe the Saints will just go with Shough and let him grow on the job. But ultimately, I think they went with the guy who was probably slightly better in this preseason.
Yeah. And I think I've said it on the show. I think just based on the way Kellen's handled this team, I think he had to go with the guy who's probably earned it. They've got a lot of veterans on this team. A lot of guys, they've done a nice job just building camaraderie and everything on this team. If they would just go into it and be like, hey, we've got to develop this guy on the field because we think he might be the one down the line. I think they'd have a hard time selling it considering all the other stuff they did this offseason. I think maybe you couldn't say clearly, but I do think that a lot of us really thought that Spencer was going to be the guy going into week one. Obviously, they said Tyler Shough made a run at it late. I do think it was a very close decision, but yeah, I think start to finish, Spencer's been the most consistent player for this training camp preseason, and give him the first shot out there. Kellen Moore trying to make it sound like he's their guy, and that's who they're rolling with. I do think that there's a very good chance that we do see Tyler Shough this season. I think they have to see it, but they're not going to be going into it saying, well, we're not going to. So at some point we're going to see this. They're going to go into this with under the assumption they're going to be a winning football team.
Luke, we're having a little bit of trouble with your audio. I think we caught most of what you said there, but I do think, and Matt, will ask you next, like, if you're going to be honest with your team and say we're going to try to win in 2025, to Luke's point, then this was probably the choice you had to make. Now, does that mean Spencer Rattler is still the starter in week 10? We can talk about that, but as of right now, that was the choice to make.
Yeah, I mean, I needed to see the gap between them as that big. I think if Kellen Moore had named Shough the starter in week one, I would have been fine with that. But Rattler did show good strides throughout the preseason. Obviously he started 2 of those 3 games, but he really, I think, cut down on kind of those turnover-worthy throws that he really made last year. And so I think that was maybe the key separator for now. You're muted, Zach.
Sorry, guys, I'm muted. Yeah, look, we saw it last year that Rattler was kind of behind Jake Haener at first. Like, I think it makes a big difference that the guy's in his second year, and he did show some growth, Jeff. And you were the one who called this after Sunday's preseason game when I'm not sure everyone was ready to go that far. And you said, look, it's Spencer Rattler's job, at least right now.
Well, I think we all were on the same page on that. I mean, like Luke said, he's just been more consistent, and I think you can make a case that this was maybe the plan all along. I don't think this is by any means a finalized decision. I think what Kellen Moore was doing today was backing his starting quarterback. I mean, there's no reason to, give him any doubt. So of course he's going to back him, but there's no doubt that they want Tyler Shough to continue to develop. And I think it's in a kind of a no lose situation for the team. And if Spencer Rattler plays well, then they're good. If he doesn't, then they can keep developing Tyler Shough, a guy that they still highly value behind him, and pull him in. I think it makes more sense for them to, if they're going to go to Shough down the road, that makes more sense to give Rattler the first shot at the job when they were so close, and then maybe bring in Shough later if that's the case, than it would be the other way around. So I don't think this is a surprise to anyone that's been at camp or watched this team this preseason.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, do you guys agree with that? That this was probably the plan all along, unless Tyler Shough just blew everybody away and came in and showed he's definitely ready for the job.
I don't know. I mean, he just kind of like with Kellen Moore being a first-time head coach, he doesn't really have much of a track record to go on how he handles the situations. Certainly there are coaches who believe that developing rookie quarterbacks take time, and that's something that Kellen Moore said today was that, Tyler Shough is not the first rookie to have to play scout team quarterback and to go on to have a successful career. They believe in kind of this developmental plan. But, I would imagine when they picked him 40th overall that there was part of them that wanted to, win the job. So I don't know. I think it's more of a testament to Rattler's steady progress throughout camp and what he showed the coaches this offseason than it necessarily is, this is the plan for Shough. We're going to let him grow.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that, they're in an interesting situation because you see teams all the time draft a rookie quarterback and then they sit him behind, a veteran or in Spencer Rattler's case, somebody who has more experience than he does. And they give him a couple games to develop. And then they turn it over to them at some point during that season. Like we saw it last year with the New England Patriots sitting Drake May behind Jacoby Brissett. Obviously a different situation, right? But at the same time, there's a good chance the Saints are just not a good football team this year. And they're going to potentially be in the market for a quarterback at the top of next year's draft class. So, I don't, in that scenario, I do not think there's a real chance that they can just go through this year without seeing what Tyler Shough has. They got to see if he's got even any traits that make him be, in their minds, the guy that they can build around for the future, because they could potentially have a very big decision to make next year.
Yeah, that's the other part of this, Jeff, and you mentioned that in your column as well. Just because this is the decision for now does not mean, again, that it's the decision at midseason. And at some point, again, with the caveat that, if Spencer Rattler comes out and the Saints start 6-3 or something, well, then he's probably not getting benched. But at some point, the Saints need to know what they have with their 40th overall pick.
Right. I think there's kind of two tracks that are going on right now. One is, how do we get ready for the opening game in 2 weeks against Arizona? What's our best decision to try and win that game and win early in the season? And then maybe who's our long-term quarterback? And I think both those things can be mutually exclusive of each other. And I think that's exactly what is going to happen here. But I don't think it's necessarily, embedded that Spencer Rattler is going to get replaced at some point by Tyler Shough. If he plays well, he'll stay in the lineup. So I don't think it's, when I said part of the plan, what I meant by that is there were plenty of people in the building, at least I talked to, that fully believed that Tyler Shough would not start the opening game. And we're fine with that. So I guess that's what I meant by it. I mean, if he would have risen up and outplayed him, they would have loved it. But the fact that he didn't, I don't think is some major disappointment to at least some certain people I've talked to.
What is the growth that Spencer Rattler showed in y'all's opinion? I mean, consistency, decision-making, all these things are sort of mentioned. Is that where you come down on it too?
I would say he looks more decisive. I think you still see a lot of the same Spencer Rattler from last year, and that sometimes he holds the ball too long, or sometimes he makes a boneheaded throw that leads to a mistake. But for his tendency to take sacks and whatnot, like, he's still getting the ball out at a relatively good rate. Knows where to go with the football, makes the smart checkdowns. Like, he's kind of in this interesting, like, balance between, all right, what's the right play? Can I try and force it? Am I scrambling outside the pocket? But I just think, like, all that decision making is a little bit more even relative to what it was last year.
Yeah, just to echo Matt's point, like the ball is coming out quickly with him, and I think that's his experience showing to me. Look, all the physical tools, like we all saw that last year. You know, I think Kellen Moore said today he ran the fakest 4.9 in combine history because he's a good athlete, not a great athlete. He's not like super sudden, but like he can make plays with his feet. He can make plays with his feet, like rolling out as a passer. I think there's still some room to grow for him in terms of just like overall decision making. You know, we saw it last week. He's trying to throw to Brandon Cooks on a 3rd and 10 play when Cooks is covered up by Pat Surtain. Like, that's the last place I would want to go, even if like that's within the progression of the read. You know, that's like, to me, a low percentage throw. And there's other times when you see him make some kind of Jameis Winston-esque decisions where he's just like, screw it, I'm going to trust my talent. Where, you know, they probably got to coach a little bit of that out of him. But I think like from a talent standpoint, it's obviously there. He can really sling the ball. He's super confident, and where we've seen him grow the most is just like, you know, he plays in rhythm and on time a lot more than he did when we first saw him last year.
And I think his like escapability, he's got kind of, it's funny because I don't think he necessarily has a great clock in his head to get the ball out. I think that's something he's been working on and improved on, but I think it's still kind of lacks. But what he does have is a real innate sense to avoid the rush and kind of slither through and avoid sacks. And I think that's going to be important. I think that factored into their decision is that this offensive line has not performed that well. They've got a lot of injuries up front, and they may need his mobility, move the pocket around, and have a guy that can kind of use his legs. You know, we heard Kellen Moore say that a bunch. Any reference Tyler Shough in that way as well. But I think he realizes they've got to have mobility at quarterback, and I think that's a big benefit when you have Rattler out there.
The big question is here, you know, the Saints' opening schedule, as has been much discussed, is very difficult. I think they're at least 6-point underdogs in all 4 of their first 4 games. You know, and there's sort of this spot in weeks 5 and 6, Giants, Patriots at home, where they're going to have a little bit of an easier landing spot. To me, that's the spot where if you're going to make a switch, that's the first sort of junction where you could do it. Do you guys agree with that? Do you think we're looking at a longer term period? Is Spencer, like Kellen Moore did say today, like, hey, we're not going to do this QB debate all year long. And I think he may be wishing more than he may be saying that, because I think we're going to do the QB debate all year long. But when he said that, I kind of got the feeling he meant, you know, look, let's give it a pretty long tail here.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, to me, it's dependent on a couple factors, right? It's dependent, like, how does Spencer Rattler perform in the starting quarterback role? Like, does Tyler Shough really show some signs of growth? Like we saw from him from day 1 of training camp until the last preseason game. Like, I think there was legitimate growth there. Like, does all that stuff line up to where you can make that sort of decision? I think, like, if you're just looking at this, like from a prognostication standpoint, how you think it would play out, I think that, to me, makes sense as a point where, like, we could end up talking about Tyler Shough being put into the starting lineup here. But, like, we don't know. Like, Spencer Rattler could go out there and perform really well. Right? Like, it could exceed everybody's expectations, and then, like, then it's a more interesting conversation. But, you know, I do think it would have been a pretty challenging spot to drop a rookie quarterback in to Arizona, San Francisco, Seattle, Buffalo. Those last 2 games being on the road, that's a really tough spot for somebody making his first, you know, his NFL debut.
You know, and I think, you know, Luke said something earlier that I think is important to note, and that is, you know, they do have kind of a veteran team. I know they keep talking about how young this team is, but there's a lot of that offensive line's got a lot of vets. Alvin Kamara's a vet. Brandon Cooks, Olave. These guys want to win, man. I mean, they want to win right now. They don't want to wait for Tyler Shough to figure it out. And I think that's a big factor here is that he's just a little behind as far as being NFL ready compared to Spencer Rattler. That's to be understood. And I think, as a first-time head coach, Kellen Moore's got to keep that buy-in with his vets on the team. And so I think he's not letting the players make the decision. He made the decision, but I do think that plays a part in this decision is, you got to owe it to your team to try and win every game you can. And I think Rattler early on is going to have the chance to be the guy. And we've seen it happen all over the league where you don't think it's the guy. And then, Sam Darnold gets thrown in Minnesota and he ends up having a great year. It happens all the time. So we'll see how it plays out. I don't think anybody's going into this trying to do an over-under on when it's going to happen. But to Matt's point, I'm sure everyone in Atlanta was saying the same thing at this time of year, and you always knew that Michael Penix was in the background. And if it didn't work out, you had a ready-made backup ready to go in there, and that's why they drafted Penix. And I think the same is the case for Shough.
Yeah, and then talking about the rest of the roster is a good transition to today's other news, which is that it was NFL cutdown day, and the Saints had to have their initial 53-man roster in place by 3 p.m. So they have done that. And Luke is going to step away in a minute. So I want to get his take on this before he goes. And then we'll bring Rod Walker in for his take and maybe go back to the QBs for a second. But Luke, you kind of wrote an analysis piece, or you and Matt combined on an analysis piece that you can find at NOLA.com/Saints right now. Any surprises about the way the Saints went about things? I mean, we've talked for the last week about some of the tough decisions they had. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is cut. Isaiah Foskey is cut. Jake Haener is cut, which might have been the surprise. But where did your mind go when you saw the initial 53?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily surprises. I think it was just like, it was interesting to see just like the way the roster was composed. You got, what was it, Matt? 5 linebackers on this. One, it doesn't include DeMarco Jackson, who started their first 2 preseason games, but kind of like lost his spot late to Jalen Ford, I thought. Nephi Sewell, who's been a core special teamer for them for the last couple of years, was not part of that group. Rajon Wright, who I think came on really strong the last 2 games in particular. Had a couple pass breakups, had 11 tackles in the special team or in the preseason. Somebody who really secured a spot, and I think they had to make room for him, and they had to make room to keep 4 running backs. They wanted to keep Devin Neal, even though he didn't really get a chance to show what he could do a whole lot during the preseason. So I just think there were some guys that were squeezed out because like they wanted a longer look at some others. And for guys like Clyde or even like guys like Terrell Burgess, who has experience with Brandon Staley, I think that they can pass those guys through cut down without worrying about it being claimed on waivers and get them back pretty easily. Like Kellen Moore said, that was going to be a tool that they used when they're putting their roster together. So like, I have a feeling like we'll be seeing some of these guys back on the practice squad first, and then ultimately on the active roster at some point this year.
I mean, that's sort of a major point to make here, is that this is just the initial 53. There's more moves to make. They'll name their 16-man practice squad tomorrow, maybe 17 if they can get Charlie Smith on there too. And a lot of these guys are going to hang around in New Orleans. And Kellen Moore has made it clear he wants a lot of these guys to hang around. There will be a few who get claimed or go elsewhere, but this is not the final chapter. So, okay, we're going to take a quick break. Luke is going to step back. When we come back, Rod Walker will be here. He'll give us his take on the QB situation, and we will continue to talk Saints 53-man roster and more here on the Saints Insider.
Banking has come to a crossroads. Do you want to bank with an actual bank, with actual people? One that you can walk into or drive through. Get real help from a real person. Or do you want a bank that lives inside your phone? A digital bank that gives you control of your money anywhere, anytime. Well, why not both? Bank Plus, a partner in your corner, wherever that may be.
Did they ask you to do the commercial too?
Yeah, but they just gave me one line.
Bet like a Caesar. Like, we're going to sit here and we're going to tell them how Caesars Sportsbook is just so easy to use that you can watch and bet thousands of sports events, even some NFL games.
They'll probably show us betting on our favourite players and teams at all the Vegas hotspots too.
Like, we have time for that montage.
I told him I couldn't do it.
They couldn't afford me.
All right, welcome back to the Saints Insider. Still waiting. Rod Walker we're waiting on him to connect, but he will be here in just a minute. Zach Ewing hanging out with Matthew Paris and Jeff Duncan. And do want to let you know that the Saints Insider podcast is sponsored by Bank Plus. From small business to big business, home loans to bank anywhere technology, Bank Plus is here for New Orleans. New deposit customers can reach out today to learn about incredible rate specials. Learn more at bankplus.net. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. And yeah, we're talking quarterback. We're talking 53-man roster. Let's see if we got Rod. Rod, can you hear? We can't see you, but I think we can hear you. Nope. It's still okay. We're still waiting on Rod. We'll get to his thoughts on the QB situation in just a minute. But first, guys, Luke mentioned it before the break. The 53-man roster, Matt, like, I don't know. This is not final by any means. This was just simply a deadline the Saints had to meet.
Yeah, I feel like this was the first, like, you can feel Kellen Moore's fingerprints on this roster, right? Like, the decision to release Haener, I think, sure, it came down to a numbers game, but if they really wanted Jake Haener on this roster, if Kellen Moore really wanted Jake Haener, they would have kept him. Like, I just think, like, you look at the way that they kept, for instance, Maliki Matavao over Trayton Welsh. Like, Trayton Welsh, to me, had the better camp than Matavao did. And yet they prioritized the draft pick, as teams tend to do. But then they got rid of some of the old draft picks. Even though this is the same front office and the same regime, like, I do think you're starting to see a little bit of a shift where they're going to prioritize their new guys, and some of the older ones, Isaiah Foskey, they're out the door now. Jake Haener, like, there's definitely a transition underway here. And I think you're going to see that largely throughout the year. Like, this is very much a transition year for the Saints.
Yeah, I think that's very clear. And honestly, Jeff, it's a little bit refreshing to see that like, and what we need to talk about the trade here in a minute. The Saints are still making a few sort of let's be competitive now moves, but the tone was set for this camp from the beginning when Mickey Loomis spoke on July 22nd and said he wouldn't say rebuilding, but he would, was it transition, or what did he say? What was the word?
Reset.
A reset. Yeah. A reset. And like, we've seen some of that. Devin Neal over Clyde Edwards-Helaire is an example of that. And with the Saints kept every draft pick except for one. Fadil Diggs didn't make the roster. I'm guessing he'll land on the practice squad, but they are gonna see what they have in these young guys.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, 9 rookies are on the roster. That's got to be the most they've had in a long time, maybe more than a decade, I would imagine. The fact that they traded for Asim Richards, I think that was clearly just a move for this opening week. I mean, obviously they probably had a decent evaluation of him, but they needed a backup tackle to get through just the opener. They're really struggling to find that third tackle with injuries and things like that. But I think there's a clear, like, stratification of this roster where the starting lineups are pretty veteran laden for the most part. I mean, only one of these rookies, Kelvin Banks, is going to start. The rest of them are backups. So you got this kind of veteran starting lineup and then a bunch of young guys. And that's probably also cap related as well. Trying to, kind of reset the cap that got out of whack there for a few years. But they're definitely thin in some areas. Tight ends, razor thin right now, and so is some spots along the offensive line. So I do think they will continue to churn that bottom 5 of the 53 throughout these early weeks.
Tight end feels like a position to me that maybe they go after or see what else is out there. Like, the Giants released Greg Doy, whatever his last name is, from the Broncos.
Dulcich. Yeah.
And then I feel like there was another tight end I saw that hit the waiver wise. Like, we saw them obviously interested in Noah Fant earlier. They addressed the size with trade for Devon Bailey, but would they rather take a chance there than say Jack Stoll? I don't know. Tight end feels like the position to me that like maybe they explore what else is out there.
Yeah, on that point, both Foster Moreau and Taysom Hill will begin the season on the PUP list. That means the earliest they could come back is week 7, right? And then you've also got a couple of guys. Week 5? Okay.
It's 4 games, but those guys aren't going to be ready by week 5.
No.
I'd be shocked.
I'm getting my PUP and IR rules all mixed together, but there's also Landon Young is on IR, designated to return.
He's done for the
couple
year.
of other guys. Oh, he's done. Okay, see, I'm getting them all confused. Landon Young is done, but in that vein, the Saints did trade for an offensive tackle, a swing tackle from the Cowboys, and that is Asim Richards. And so it's just another point. I mean, basically, this was a pick swap in 2028. Saints gave up a 6th. They get a 7th. They get Asim Richards. I don't know. Like it's just they needed depth there. I mean, literally, at some point today, they had no backup offensive tackles. The only offensive tackles on the roster were Tali Fuanga and Kelvin Banks, their first-round pick. So, like, they need bodies. They probably need more bodies. And as other teams make cuts, you're going to see more of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, this wasn't like the Devon Bailey trade to me where, they knew that they had a lack of size all offseason, and why didn't you address it until late in camp? This was, oh my God, it's a tire fire. Let's try and get something we have. The draft compensation, swapping a pick or two, like that's fine. They're both late round picks. We saw this similar with I think the John Ridgeway trade from a year ago was kind of like a similar draft asset in terms of giving up. Like that's not terrible. That even if Richards is bad for them, I think it's a justifiable trade. Like they just needed a body there, and it's better to secure a guy that you think can maybe contribute for you and you're willing to trade for than taking a chance on waiver wires. Because the Cowboys athletic writer, he said that Richards was probably like the odd man out there in terms of getting cut, but I think it's just better to try and get your guy, especially if the draft asset, like what you're giving up is minimal.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about going through the waiver process or trying to get him. You can secure him with this trade. And I think, one of the more interesting things that they did that I thought wasn't very surprising, really, to be honest, was the backup running back positions. Going young there with Neal and Velus Jones makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, I know Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a big popular player from LSU, and Cam Akers had a big name, but neither one of those guys, I think you would agree, Matt, neither one of those guys outperformed the younger guys, even though we didn't get to see Neal. I didn't think Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Akers really popped in any way. So in that case, the tried and true axiom in the NFL is you go younger, especially in the Saints situation where you're talking about a guy that's going to be your 3rd and 4th back. You're going to go younger there and cheaper, a guy that might have a bigger upside in Devin Neal than you pretty much know what Akers and Edwards-Helaire are. So I thought that made perfect sense for where this team's at right now.
Yeah, and I think if either of those guys were to make it, they would have made it over Kendrick Miller, and I think that's kind of a testament to the camp that Kendrick Miller had, was that, that they really pushed him, put him through the fire, and he came out, pretty clean to start the year. And so I think it's also reflective of their belief in Kendrick Miller.
Yep.
Yeah. Just to kind of finish correcting myself here, John Ridgeway, the defensive tackle, is IR designated to return, as is the other offensive tackle. Barry Wesley is designated to return. Landon Young is not designated to return, so his season is over. So apologize for mixing that up. And then Morrow and Hill are on the PUP list, so they're out 4 games. Talk quickly about receiver guys. I know a lot of us said, myself included, Cedric Wilson could be on the chopping block. Ultimately, that's a spot where the Saints kept their veterans outside of Mason Tipton, and instead it's Dante Pettis who gets cut, and it's Kevin Austin who gets cut.
Yeah, I don't really understand that one in terms of I don't know what this team is going to do for punt return now. I guess that's Rashid Shaheed, but I don't really understand why you would expose a guy with an injury history like that to punts. I know he wasn't hurt on the punt last year. He got hurt in like actual running routes, but I don't know. I think they should explore other options there. Maybe it's someone else. Like, you could have even maybe kept 7 receivers and like have Rajon Wright make the practice squad. Like, I was trying to do the math of like where the Haener, like they clearly wanted Haener spot somewhere, and they ended up going 6 corners instead of 7 receivers is a ton, but like they need a punt returner. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they do there.
Well, I think they also those last few spots almost always come down to special teams and who's going to help you on game day. And the one thing about Cedric Wilson that some of the coaches have told me is, and I know fans roll their eyes at this, but it does matter to coaches, is he's like the best blocker of their wide receivers. And so that can play a role in the offense. It plays – you may not notice it, but they're running some plays, and he's going to be the guy out there because he is a good blocker. So I think some things like that sometimes play into it. I think he also, to Matt's point earlier about putting a stamp on the team from Kellen Moore, I think Isaiah Stallbird making it, that's another thing where I think he clearly earned it in preseason. Yeah. I think he was their leading tackler on special teams. This is a guy, when camp started, I don't think a lot of people would have said, yeah, he's going to be on the 53. But I think Kellen Moore's being true to what he's preaching, backing it up by picking the guys that earned the right, earned the 53. And I think Stallbird did that. I wouldn't have had him on there probably to start camp, but you can't deny that he's one of their better special teams players. And they're probably looking for a guy to eventually become the next JT Gray, and I think he can be that guy.
Yeah, that's the one that I wish I had on my projection.
Oh, Stallbird?
Yeah.
Let's keep in mind, too, that if, let's say, Dante Pettis makes it onto the practice squad, you can elevate these guys for game day 2 times, and then they have to be added at some point. But again, that's all sort of the different machinations they can use to manipulate this thing as the season goes on. The other one of those would be the third quarterback. I mean, typically teams have a third quarterback on their 53-man roster, and then he's a game day inactive and listed as the emergency third quarterback. That's a rule change from a couple years ago. Right now, the Saints don't have that. I know Easton Stick, the Falcons cut. He's a name that a lot of people floated because he was in L.A. with the Chargers with Kellen Moore and Brandon Staley, so he's a name. I know the Lions cut Hendon Hooker. There's a lot of names out there, but at some point you'd expect the Saints, and of course they could just they could just bring back Hunter Deckers as well, who's been in camp with them off and on. But without Haener, they will bring in a third quarterback at some point.
Yeah, pretty much. Kellen Moore said that yesterday, and I think they'll have 4. It sounds like they'll have 4 Deckers being on the practice squad probably.
Yeah, and I don't think, even if Haener doesn't, there's a possibility Haener ends up on the practice squad.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Both those guys back, and they have 4 in the building. That would make sense. I mean, he said repeatedly that he likes Jake Haener. He likes all 3 of them. He wants them to be a part of it. They like the room. I think if Jake Haener doesn't come back, it's because Jake Haener doesn't want to come back. I think he'll have an opportunity to come back.
Okay, interesting. All right, well, we are, 12 days away now from the season opener against the Arizona Cardinals. We know that Spencer Rattler is QB1, so we will end kind of where we started with Rattler. But this was, as far as preseason news days, we knew cut down day is always a big one. Saints also get their starting quarterback. So we now see this Saints team start to take shape for, a season with really low expectations. But, it's always exciting to see this start nonetheless, Matt.
Yeah, it was a very busy day. I'll tell you that. I kind of wish they had put off the quarterback decision until tomorrow. But, hey, I appreciate it.
Space out the news, guys. Come on.
I think Kellen was tired of answering questions about it. He just said, let's get this thing over with. He's definitely gotten tired of it.
To peel back the curtain a little bit, he wasn't supposed to talk today.
Yeah.
They put him on the schedule last minute, and I appreciate it. We would have all seen it's better for him to announce it ahead of time than us to roll out to practice tomorrow. See, Spencer Rattler's taking first team reps an individual, and I said for it that way. Like, it's just better to quash it. And I know he dragged it out a bit, but credit to him for at least getting up there and saying it, even if it makes all of our jobs a little chaotic.
No, I totally agree. I mean, once you make the decision in the building internally, go ahead and announce it, because people are going to talk. It's going to get out. You can control it, control the narrative that way.
All right, so Spencer Rattler is the starting quarterback. The 53-man roster is set, at least for now, and the Saints Insider rolls on. We'll have another episode for you later in the week where we're going to do some 2025 bold predictions, and maybe we'll make some college football picks too. I'm excited. College football season starting. So for Matthew Paris and Jeff Duncan, get those L's down, man. And Luke Johnson was on. Our apologies. We had some technical difficulties with Rod. Couldn't get him on. But we will see you later. Thank you for watching the Saints Insider, brought to you by Bank Plus.